At our engagement party, Derek whispered, "Don't talk to her. She's unstable." I nodded, trusting him completely. But when Vanessa approached me in the bathroom, she said 5 words that made my blood run cold. "Check his phone. Gallery. December." Her hands trembled as she pressed a business card into my palm. "I'm not crazy. I'm trying to save you." 2 days later, I found the photos. My perfect fiancé, my future, everything I thought I knew, shattered in an instant. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The champagne glass felt cold against my palm as I stood in the corner of the Sentinel Hotel's ballroom, watching Derek work the room with effortless charm. He had that way about him, the kind of charisma that made everyone feel like they were the most important person in the conversation. His hand would rest on someone's shoulder just long enough to convey warmth without presumption. His laugh, genuine and infectious, would ripple through clusters of guests like a stone skipping across water. This was our engagement party, the celebration of what I believed was the beginning of my forever. 3 months earlier, Derek had proposed at Silver Falls State Park during a weekend hiking trip. We'd reached the overlook just as golden hour painted everything in amber light, and he dropped to one knee with tears in his eyes, telling me I was the missing piece he'd spent his whole life searching for. The ring, a vintage emerald-cut diamond that had belonged to his grandmother, fit perfectly. Everything about that moment felt destined, written in stars, meant to be. My best friend Chloe had squeezed my arm earlier in the evening, her eyes shining with happiness for me. "This is it, Lauren. This is your person. You deserve every bit of this joy." I'd believed her. After a string of failed relationships throughout my 20s, after relocating from Boise to Portland 5 years ago with nothing but a design degree and desperate hope, after countless lonely nights wondering if I'd ever find someone who truly saw me, Derek felt like the universe's apology for making me wait so long. He was successful, managing major accounts at Summit Marketing Group. He was thoughtful, remembering small details like how I took my coffee or that I preferred daisies to roses. He was patient during my anxious moments when deadlines at Cascade Creative left me frazzled and short-tempered. Most importantly, he seemed to adore me with an intensity that made me feel treasured in ways I'd never experienced. Our relationship had moved quickly, perhaps too quickly in retrospect, but it felt natural at the time. We'd met at a professional networking event downtown. I'd been standing awkwardly near the appetizer table, trying to look occupied while secretly planning my escape, when Derek approached with 2 glasses of wine and a self-deprecating joke about how these events always made him feel like he was back in high school trying to find a lunch table. Within 20 minutes, we were deep in conversation about everything from our shared love of true crime podcasts to our complicated relationships with our hometowns. Our first date happened 3 days later. Dinner at a cozy Italian restaurant in the Pearl District stretched into 4 hours of effortless conversation. He walked me home, kissed me goodnight with a gentleness that made my knees weak, and texted me before I even made it upstairs to my apartment. "Already missing you. When can I see you again?" The courtship that followed felt like something from a romantic movie. Weekend trips to Cannon Beach where we'd walk barefoot along the shoreline. Surprise deliveries of my favorite Thai food to my office when I was working late. The way he'd pull me close during movies, his fingers tracing absent patterns on my shoulder. He integrated me into his life seamlessly, introducing me to his colleagues, his friends, his family. His mother Patricia had welcomed me warmly, though with a certain reservation I'd attributed to protective maternal instincts. There had been only one shadow cast across our otherwise sunny romance. Vanessa. His ex-girlfriend of 3 years, the woman he described as his biggest mistake and closest call with disaster. He'd brought her up during our second date, unprompted, which I'd appreciated at the time. "I believe in transparency," he'd said, reaching across the table to take my hand. "I want you to know about my past so you understand why I'm so careful now, why finding you feels like such a gift." The story he told painted Vanessa as deeply troubled. They'd met when he'd brought his family's dog to her veterinary clinic. She'd seemed sweet at first, he explained, but gradually revealed herself to be possessive, jealous, and emotionally volatile. She'd go through his phone while he slept. She'd show up uninvited at his apartment or workplace. She'd manufacture crises to monopolize his time and attention. When he finally ended things after 3 exhausting years, she'd refuse to accept it, calling and texting obsessively, showing up places she knew he'd be, even contacting his friends and family to plead her case. "I have a restraining order against her," Derek had said, his voice heavy with what seemed like genuine regret. "I never wanted it to come to that, but my lawyer insisted. She just couldn't let go." I felt terrible about it because I know she's struggling with mental health issues, but I also had to protect myself and move forward with my life. The restraint order detail had actually reassured me. It suggested Derek took appropriate legal steps rather than engaging in drama. It positioned him as the reasonable party forced into an unfortunate situation. When I'd asked if Vanessa might be a problem for us, he'd shaken his head firmly. "She's been quiet for almost a year now. I think she's finally gotten help and moved on. But if she ever contacts you or tries to cause trouble, just ignore her completely. Don't engage. People like that feed on attention and reaction." I'd tucked that warning away, never expecting to need it. Vanessa had remained an abstract figure, a cautionary tale from Derek's past that only served to make me appreciate how healthy and stable our relationship was by comparison. Until tonight. The engagement party had been Derek's idea. His parents had offered to host, and though I'd initially suggested something smaller and more intimate, Derek insisted that celebrating with our community mattered. "These are the people who'll support us through marriage," he'd reasoned. "Let's start building that foundation now." So we'd invited colleagues, friends, extended family, creating a guest list that skewed heavily toward Derek's circle simply because he'd lived in Portland his entire life while my roots here were still relatively shallow. The evening had unfolded beautifully. Derek's father had given a touching toast about watching his son grow into a man of character and integrity, and how proud they were to welcome me into their family. Chloe had made everyone laugh with stories from our early days of friendship, including the time I'd accidentally sent a client email complaining about that same client to the client himself. I'd felt wrapped in warmth and goodwill, floating on the kind of happiness that makes you believe the universe is fundamentally benevolent. Then she arrived. I hadn't noticed her entrance, but I'd felt the shift in energy. Conversations seemed to pause and restart with slightly more forced enthusiasm. Derek's posture changed, his shoulders tensing in a way I'd learned meant he was managing stress while trying to appear relaxed. I followed his gaze to the entrance where a woman stood scanning the room. She was striking in an understated way. Dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, minimal makeup, wearing black pants and a cream blouse that suggested she'd come directly from work. Even from across the room, I could see the exhaustion in her posture, the weight of someone carrying a burden they'd grown tired of holding. Derek was beside me in seconds, his hand finding the small of my back, his voice low and urgent near my ear. "That's Vanessa. Don't talk to her. She's unstable. I'm going to have security escort her out. Just stay here and don't engage with her at all." My heart had started racing. This was the woman from his stories, the one who couldn't let go, the one with the restraining order. Part of me felt afraid, but another part felt a strange sadness. She looked so tired, so defeated. Whatever obsession Derek had described didn't match the exhausted resignation I saw in her face. Derek strode toward her with purpose, intercepting her before she could move deeper into the party. I watched their exchange from a distance, unable to hear words but reading body language. Derek's gestures were controlled but firm, establishing boundaries. Vanessa's responses seemed calm, almost rehearsed, as if she'd prepared for this confrontation. At one point, she looked past Derek directly at me, and our eyes met across the crowded room. What I saw there wasn't rage or jealousy. It was something closer to pity mixed with desperate determination. The interaction lasted less than 2 minutes before Derek guided her toward the exit, his hand hovering near her elbow without quite touching. I lost sight of them in the crowd, and when Derek returned 5 minutes later, he was alone, his jaw tight with barely concealed anger. "She's gone," he said, pulling me into a protective embrace. "I'm so sorry you had to see that. I thought we were past this, but clearly she's regressed. I'll call my lawyer tomorrow about reinforcing the restraining order." The party continued, but something had shifted for me. I couldn't shake the image of Vanessa's face, that look she'd given me. Throughout the rest of the evening, I found myself distracted, responding to congratulations on autopilot while my mind replayed those few seconds of eye contact. 2 hours later, I excused myself to use the restroom, grateful for a moment alone to collect my thoughts. The hotel's bathroom was elegant, all marble and soft lighting, blessedly empty when I pushed through the door. I stood at the sink, staring at my reflection, trying to reconcile the joyful bride-to-be I was supposed to be with the unsettled feeling growing in my chest. The door opened behind me. In the mirror, I watched Vanessa enter. My first instinct was fear, remembering Derek's warnings, but she held up both hands in a gesture of peace, her expression almost apologetic. "Please," she said quietly, her voice steadier than I expected. "I just need 2 minutes. Then I'll leave and never bother you again. I promise I'm not here to cause a scene." I should have walked out. Derek's warnings echoed in my head. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Everything I'd been told about this woman suggested I was in danger of being manipulated or worse. But something in her demeanor, the genuine desperation mixed with resignation, made me hesitate. "I know what he's told you about me," Vanessa continued, taking a cautious step closer but maintaining respectful distance. "He said I'm crazy, obsessive, unstable. That I couldn't let go. That he needed a restraining order to protect himself." "That's what he said," I confirmed, my voice coming out steadier than I felt. "And I believe him." "Of course you do," she said without apparent bitterness. "I believed him too. About his ex before me. He told me she was a stalker, that she'd made his life hell, that getting away from her was the best thing he ever did. I felt special because he'd chosen me after such trauma. I wanted to save him, protect him, be the good relationship that healed his wounds. The parallel she was drawing felt too calculated, too convenient. "This is exactly what Derek warned me about," I said, moving toward the door. "You're trying to poison my relationship because you can't accept that he's moved on." Vanessa reached into her purse, and I tensed, but she withdrew only a simple business card. Her name, credentials as a veterinarian, and contact information were printed in clean, professional font. "I'm not asking you to believe me right now," she said, pressing the card into my hand. "I'm asking you to check his phone. The gallery. December of last year. Look at the dates on the photos, then look at the dates he told you we broke up." "We broke up 18 months ago," I said automatically, repeating what Derek had told me. "You've been harassing him ever since." Something flickered across Vanessa's face. Pain, maybe, or the weary frustration of someone telling a truth no one wants to hear. "Check the photos, Lauren. December. Then decide if you want to talk to me or not. But do it soon. Because whatever you think about me, whatever he's told you, I'm trying to save you from what he did to me." Before I could respond, she was gone, slipping out of the bathroom and presumably out of the hotel. I stood there holding her business card, my hands trembling slightly. The smart thing would be to throw it away immediately, tell Derek about the encounter, reinforce the boundaries he'd established. But her words kept echoing. "Check his phone. December. Look at the dates." When I returned to the party, Derek immediately noticed my distress. "You okay? You look pale. Did something happen?" "I'm fine," I lied, tucking the business card deep into my clutch. "Just tired. It's been a long evening." He pulled me close, kissing my forehead with tenderness that felt genuine. "Just a little longer, then we can head home. I want you to enjoy every minute of this celebration. You deserve it." That night, lying in bed beside Derek's sleeping form, I couldn't stop thinking about Vanessa's words. His phone sat on the nightstand, face down as always. He'd never been secretive about his passcode. I'd used his phone plenty of times to look up directions or show him something when my own phone was dead. There was no reason I couldn't simply pick it up right now and check. Except that there was. Trust. The foundation of our relationship. If I looked through his phone based on the word of a woman he described as mentally unstable, what did that say about my faith in him? What did it say about us? But Vanessa's face haunted me. That exhausted determination. The specific instruction. December. The dates. She'd sounded so certain, so specific. If she was lying or delusional, wouldn't her accusations be more vague, more emotional, less focused on concrete evidence? I spent that night staring at the ceiling, Derek's steady breathing beside me, torn between loyalty and curiosity, between trust and a growing suspicion I desperately wanted to ignore. When dawn finally broke, I still hadn't decided what to do. But Vanessa's business card remained in my purse, a small white rectangle that felt like it was burning a hole through the leather. 2 days passed. I threw myself into work at Cascade Creative, using design deadlines as an excuse to avoid thinking about the engagement party, the bathroom encounter, the invitation to invade Derek's privacy. But the unease followed me everywhere, coloring even happy moments with Derek. When he'd suggest we look at venues for the wedding, I'd feel a flutter of panic rather than excitement. When he'd kiss me goodbye in the morning, I'd find myself studying his face for signs of deception I didn't know how to identify. On the third morning, Derek left for an early meeting. I stood in our loft apartment, coffee growing cold in my hand, staring at his phone still plugged in on the nightstand where he'd forgotten it. This was it. The moment of decision. I could respect his privacy, trust the man I'd agreed to marry, dismiss Vanessa's words as the desperate manipulation of someone who couldn't move forward. Or I could walk across the room, pick up that phone, and look at photos from December. My hands made the decision before my mind fully caught up. The phone unlocked with his familiar passcode. I navigated to the gallery with fingers that seemed to belong to someone else. Scrolled back to December. And there, arranged in neat rows, was the evidence that would dismantle everything I thought I knew about the man I loved. Photo after photo. Derek and Vanessa. Smiling at a restaurant I recognized from the Pearl District. Kissing on a couch. His arm around her shoulders at what looked like a holiday party. A selfie of them in bed, her head on his chest, both looking peaceful and content. The metadata was unmistakable. December 15th. December 20th. December 23rd. December 28th. But Derek told me they'd broken up 18 months ago. Which would have been more than a year before these photos were taken. And these weren't old photos accidentally still on his phone. The timeline was clear. The evidence irrefutable. My legs gave out. I sat down hard on the edge of the bed, still gripping the phone, scrolling through image after image. There were more from January. February. March. The photos only stopped in April, just 3 months before Derek and I had met at that networking event. He'd lied. About when they broke up. About the restraining order, probably. About everything. And if he'd lied about that, what else had been fiction? Was Vanessa really the unstable one? Or was that just another manipulation, another way to control the narrative and ensure I'd never listen if she tried to warn me? I sat there for 20 minutes, my entire understanding of reality reorganizing itself around this new information. The man I was planning to marry, the person I'd trusted with my future, had constructed an elaborate lie about his past. And he'd done it so convincingly that I'd never questioned it, not once. Finally, I picked up Vanessa's business card from where I'd hidden it in my dresser drawer. My hands were steady now, the shock giving way to something colder and more focused. I pulled out my own phone and typed a simple message. You were right. I found the photos. We need to talk. Vanessa's response came within minutes. Can you meet today? There's a coffee shop on Hawthorne, near my clinic. Noon. I'll bring everything. I texted back a simple yes, then sat motionless on the bed, Derek's phone still in my hand, my own phone in the other. The apartment suddenly felt foreign, like I was seeing it for the first time. The framed photo of us on the bookshelf from our trip to Cannon Beach. His jacket draped over the chair. The coffee mug I'd bought him with an inside joke printed on it. Every object seemed to mock me now, evidence of a relationship built on foundations I could no longer trust. I forwarded several of the December photos to my own phone, my fingers moving with mechanical precision. Evidence. I needed evidence because part of me still couldn't quite believe what I was seeing. Then I carefully returned Derek's phone to exactly where he'd left it, making sure the charging cable was positioned at the same angle. The morning crawled by in surreal slow motion. I showered, dressed, made toast I couldn't eat. When Derek texted that his meeting was running long and he'd grab lunch downtown, I felt relief mixed with guilt. Relief that I wouldn't have to see him before meeting Vanessa. Guilt that I was going behind his back, even though he'd apparently spent our entire relationship going behind mine. The coffee shop Vanessa had chosen was deliberately public and neutral. A bustling place with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls, the kind of spot where a dozen conversations created enough ambient noise for privacy without isolation. I arrived 10 minutes early, ordered a latte I had no intention of drinking, and claimed a table in the back corner. Vanessa arrived exactly at noon, carrying a worn leather messenger bag that looked heavy. She'd changed from her professional veterinarian attire into jeans and a simple sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. Up close, in daylight, I could see the fine lines around her eyes that spoke of stress and sleepless nights. She looked older than 30, worn down by something that went beyond normal aging. "Thank you for coming," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. Her voice was quiet but steady. "I know this takes courage. I know you probably still think I'm lying or delusional or trying to sabotage your happiness." "I saw the photos," I said, my own voice flat. "December. You were right about the dates." Something flickered across her face. Not triumph, but a weary vindication tinged with sadness. "Then you know he lied about when we broke up." "That's the first thread. If you're willing, I can show you how deep this goes." She pulled a tablet from her bag and set it on the table between us. "But before I show you anything else, I need you to understand something. I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm not trying to win him back. I'm doing this because I spent a year thinking I was losing my mind, questioning my own sanity, wondering if I really was the unstable person he told everyone I was. When I finally figured out what he'd done, I promised myself that if he ever did it again to someone else, I'd try to warn her. Even if she didn't believe me. Why would he lie about the breakup timeline?" I asked, though part of me already suspected the answer. "Because he started seeing you while we were still together," Vanessa said simply. "We didn't break up 18 months ago. We broke up 7 months ago. April 23rd, to be exact. I know because that's the day I finally moved the last of my things out of the apartment we shared." The coffee shop noise faded to a dull roar. "Shared apartment? But Derek lives alone. He's lived in that loft in the Pearl District for 3 years." Vanessa's expression was sympathetic. "He moved into that loft in May. After I left. Before that, we lived together in a townhouse in Bridlemere. His parents own it. When we split, he moved out and into the Pearl District place. I stayed in the townhouse for another month before I found my own apartment." She turned the tablet toward me. On the screen was a lease agreement. I could see her name clearly listed alongside Derek's, for a property address in Bridlemere. The lease was dated from 3 years prior and ran through this past May. "He told me he'd been living alone for years after his last relationship ended badly," I said, hearing the hollowness in my own voice. "I'm sure he did," Vanessa replied. "Just like he told you I was obsessive and unstable. Just like he probably told you he needed a restraining order against me. He said he has one. He doesn't. There's no restraining order, Lauren. I've never been served with any legal documents. I've never harassed him or shown up uninvited anywhere. That's another lie he tells to make sure his current girlfriend never listens if the previous one tries to warn her." My hands had started trembling. I set down the coffee cup before I could spill it. "How many girlfriends?" Vanessa's jaw tightened. "As far as I can verify. I'm number 4. There was someone before me who he described as a stalker. When I finally tracked her down last year, after everything fell apart, She told me almost the same story you're hearing now. And there was someone before her that the first woman knew about. I haven't been able to find the earliest one, but based on the pattern, I'd guess this has been going on for at least 8 years. 8 years of cycling through women, building relationships, then rewriting history to paint them as villains when he moved on to the next target. The scope of it was staggering. Why? I asked. What does he get out of this? Vanessa leaned back, her expression thoughtful. I've thought about that a lot. I think it's partly practical. If his new girlfriend believes the ex is crazy and dangerous, she'll never listen if that ex tries to tell her the truth. It creates a perfect isolation. But I also think there's something darker. I think he enjoys it. The power of controlling the narrative. The thrill of maintaining multiple realities. Maybe even the satisfaction of watching his exes struggle to be believed while he's already moved on with a clean slate. She swiped through several more images on the tablet. Text messages between her and Derek. Recent ones, dated well into what should have been his exclusive relationship with me. Some were mundane planning about dinner or weekend plans. Others were intimate, affectionate, exactly what you'd expect between committed partners. These are from January, she said, pointing to a string of messages. He told me he had to work late. I'm guessing that's when he was with you. Our third date, I confirmed numbly. He took me to that Italian place near his apartment. His new apartment that I didn't know was new. Vanessa nodded. He took me there too. First date. It's probably his standard move. The revelation shouldn't have stung as much as it did, given everything else, but somehow the idea that even our intimate moments were scripted, recycled from previous relationships, felt uniquely violating. How did you find out? I asked. What made you realize something was wrong? She smiled without humor. I got suspicious in March when his schedule started getting erratic. He'd always been reliable, usually overly so. Suddenly he was working late constantly, traveling for business on weekends, claiming his parents needed help with projects that took hours. I chalked it up to stress at work initially. But then I found a receipt in his jacket pocket for flowers. Nice ones, expensive. I thought maybe he was planning to surprise me, but the date on the receipt was from a week earlier and I'd never received any flowers. Standard cheating discovery, I observed. That's what I thought at first too. That he was just cheating. But when I confronted him, he didn't get defensive or apologetic. He got cold. Distant. Started telling me I was being paranoid, that the flowers were for a colleague's birthday, that my jealousy was becoming a real problem. He suggested I needed to talk to someone about my trust issues. Within days, he'd completely flipped the script so that I was the problem, not his suspicious behavior. Gaslighting, I said, recognizing the term from articles I'd read, never imagining I'd be using it to describe my own relationship. Exactly. And he was good at it. So good that I started doubting myself. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe my previous bad relationship had left me with unresolved trust issues. He was so calm, so reasonable in his explanations. Meanwhile, I felt like I was spiraling. I started checking his location obsessively, going through his things when he was in the shower, analyzing every text message for hidden meaning. I was becoming exactly the jealous, unstable girlfriend he was describing. Her voice had taken on an edge of remembered pain. That's when I found your engagement announcement online. Pure accident. I was scrolling through social media, saw a mutual friend had commented on something, clicked through, and there it was. Derek Sullivan is engaged to Lauren Hayes. The post was dated 2 weeks after he'd told me we needed to work on my trust issues before we could move forward with our relationship. Oh God, I breathed. I confronted him that night. Showed him the post. Asked him to explain how he was engaged to someone else while telling me we were working through rough patch. And you know what he did? I shook my head, though I could imagine. He told me I'd clearly fabricated the image. That my paranoia had escalated to the point where I was creating fake social media posts to justify my irrational jealousy. He said it with such conviction, such concern in his voice, that for about 30 seconds I actually wondered if I had somehow manufactured the whole thing. That's how effective he is at manipulation. So what changed? How did you finally break free? Vanessa pulled out her phone and showed me a photo of a golden retriever puppy. This is Copper. A client brought him in for his first checkup, and the owner mentioned she was a therapist specializing in relationship trauma. We got talking, and I ended up pouring out the whole story. She gently suggested that what I was describing sounded like a specific pattern of emotional abuse. She recommended I document everything and talk to a colleague of hers who had experience with this kind of manipulation. That colleague helped me see the pattern clearly. The love bombing in the beginning, the gradual isolation, the reality distortion, the way he'd rewritten our entire relationship to paint me as the villain. Once I understood the pattern, I couldn't unsee it. I moved out 3 days later while he was at work. Left a note saying I was done and not to contact me. Blocked his number. Started therapy. But he contacted you anyway, I guessed. For about 2 weeks, he sent messages from different numbers, emails from new accounts. Not threatening, nothing that would constitute legal harassment. Just sad messages about how he missed me, how he wanted to work things out, how my mental health crisis was hurting both of us. Classic hoovering, my therapist called it. Trying to suck me back in. Did it work? Almost, Vanessa admitted. There were moments I almost called him back. The cognitive dissonance was brutal. Part of me still loved him, still remembered all the good times, still wanted to believe we could fix things. But I kept going to therapy, kept reminding myself of the documented evidence, kept reading about narcissistic abuse patterns. Eventually, the messages stopped. I assumed that's when he decided I was a lost cause and started investing fully in you. The timeline aligned with my own experience. Derek and I had met in early May, just weeks after Vanessa had moved out. What I'd interpreted as a man ready for new love after healing from past trauma was actually a man urgently seeking a replacement for the girlfriend who'd escaped. I need to ask you something, I said slowly. The restraining order story. The showing up at his work and calling obsessively. Did any of that happen? None of it, Vanessa said firmly. I have phone records showing I never called him after the breakup. I have my work schedule proving I couldn't have been at his office during the times he presumably claimed I was stalking him. I have witnesses, colleagues who can verify I was at my clinic during the alleged incidents. It's all fabrication, Lauren. All of it. He needed me to be the crazy ex so you wouldn't question his narrative. She pulled out a folder from her bag. Inside were printed phone records, highlighted sections showing her call history. Printouts of her work calendar. Even a statement from her clinic manager confirming her schedule during specific dates Derek had presumably cited in his stalking claims. I started documenting everything when I realized he was going to rewrite history, Vanessa explained. My therapist suggested creating a clear record in case he tried to damage my professional reputation or take legal action. I never thought I'd be using it to convince his next girlfriend that I'm not actually insane. The weight of evidence was overwhelming. This wasn't the scattered claims of an unstable person grasping for attention. This was methodical, verified documentation from someone who'd been systematically discredited and was fighting to reclaim her reality. Why not go public? I asked. Post this online, warn people. Vanessa's expression turned sad. Because that's exactly what crazy exes do. If I'd posted this publicly, it would have confirmed everything he said about me. Obsessed, can't let go, making up stories for attention. The only way to be believed is to quietly reach out to the next victim and hope she's willing to listen. Even that risks being labeled stalking or harassment. The trap was perfect. By painting his exes as unstable stalkers, Derek ensured that any attempt they made to warn future girlfriends would be interpreted as evidence of their instability. It was a self-reinforcing lie that protected him while silencing his victims. There's more, Vanessa said quietly. Things I discovered after I left that I think you need to know about. Not just about the cheating or the timeline lies. About who he really is underneath the charm. She pulled out another folder, this one thicker. Financial records. Credit card statements. Legal documents I couldn't immediately identify. While we were together, Derek convinced me to invest in one of his business ventures. A property development project he said his company was launching. He needed startup capital from outside investors, and he wanted me to be part of his success. I liquidated my savings, about $40,000, and gave it to him. My stomach dropped. Let me guess. The investment didn't exist. Oh, it existed, Vanessa corrected. But it wasn't his project. It was his parents' project, and they had no idea I'd given him money. When I tried to ask about returns after we broke up, his father was confused. Told me Derek had never mentioned any outside investors. The money I gave Derek went into his personal accounts and was spent on God knows what. Possibly funding his double life with you. I thought about Derek's lifestyle. The nice dinners, the weekend trips, the expensive gifts. I'd assumed it was all from his salary, but what if some of it was money he'd extracted from Vanessa under false pretenses? Did you report it? Try to get it back? I considered it, Vanessa said. But my lawyer explained that because I'd given him the money willingly, proving fraud would be difficult and expensive. It would be my word against his about what the money was for. And Derek would just claim I was a vindictive ex making false accusations. The legal battle would cost more than I'd lost, with no guarantee of winning. So I wrote it off as the price of escape and moved on. Her resignation was heartbreaking. Not just the financial loss, but the defeated acceptance that seeking justice would only cause more damage. Is he doing the same thing to you? Vanessa asked gently. Has he asked for money or tried to involve you in investments? I thought about it carefully. Not yet. But we've talked about combining finances after the wedding. He suggested I sell my car and we'd share his since we'd be living together and didn't need two vehicles. He's encouraged me to consider leaving Cascade Creative to help him launch a consulting business that would allow us to work together. Those are set-up moves, Vanessa said. Isolating your resources, making you financially dependent, positioning himself to control your money. If you'd gone through with the wedding, I'd bet significant money that within a year you'd find yourself financially entangled in ways that would be hard to extract from. The pattern was so clear now. The whirlwind romance to create emotional dependency. The rewriting of history to isolate from anyone who might contradict his narrative. The gradual financial entanglement. The gaslighting when questions arose. Derek wasn't just a cheater or a liar. He was a predator with a refined system. What about his family? I asked. Do they know about any of this? Vanessa's expression turned complicated. His parents are lovely people. Genuinely kind, generous, trusting. I think they're completely unaware of what their son does. His mother Patricia particularly seemed to adore me when we were together. Derek keeps his different lives completely separate. You'll notice he never talks about introducing you to his parents until the relationship is serious enough that they'll accept the narrative he's created. I had met his parents, multiple times. They'd welcomed me warmly, mentioned how happy they were to see Derek with such a nice girl after his difficult experience with his troubled ex. They had no idea they were talking about Vanessa, that the troubled ex sitting across from them had been nothing like the person Derek described. I need to know something, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The woman before you, the one you found. Did she warn you? Did you have a chance to know before you got in too deep? Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. She tried. She sent me a Facebook message about 6 months into my relationship with Derek. Told me he was lying about their breakup, that he was dangerous, that I should run. I showed the message to Derek immediately. He explained that she was indeed the obsessive stalker he'd told me about, that this proved he needed the restraining order he'd filed. He seemed sad about it, concerned for her mental health, frustrated that she wouldn't leave him alone. So I blocked her and never responded. I've thought about that message every day since I left him. She tried to save me and I didn't listen. The guilt in her voice was crushing. I reached across the table and put my hand over hers. You couldn't have known. He's practiced at this. That's what my therapist says, Vanessa agreed. But I still think about all the pain I could have avoided if I'd just been willing to listen. That's why I'm here, Lauren. Why I crashed your engagement party and risked you calling the police or confirming everything Derek said about me. Because maybe you'll listen where I didn't. Maybe I can save one person from going through what I went through. We sat in silence for a long moment, the coffee shop bustle continuing around us, normal people having normal conversations about normal problems. I envied them their simple concerns. What do I do now? I finally asked. How do I handle this? Vanessa leaned forward, her voice intent. First, trust yourself. Trust what you've seen and what you're feeling. He's going to try to make you doubt your own perceptions. He's going to be calm, rational, hurt by your accusations. He's going to have explanations for everything that sound plausible. Don't let him rewrite your reality. Second, document everything before you confront him. Take screenshots of those photos. Save these records I've shown you. Email them to yourself from an account he doesn't know about. Create a paper trail he can't manipulate or erase. Third, tell someone you trust everything that's happening. A friend, family member, therapist. Someone who can serve as an external anchor to reality when he starts the gaslighting. And fourth, she paused, her voice softening. Be prepared to walk away completely. Not just end the engagement but cut off all contact. Men like Derek don't accept rejection gracefully. They see it as a challenge, a game they need to win. The only way to truly get free is to disappear from his life entirely. Her advice was practical, hard-earned from experience. I pulled out my phone and started following her first instruction, taking photos of the documents she'd brought, emailing them to my personal account that Derek had never accessed. When I looked up, Vanessa was watching me with something like hope mixed with sorrow. I'm sorry, she said. I'm sorry you're going through this. I'm sorry I couldn't warn you earlier. I'm sorry that being right means your relationship is over. Thank you, I said, meaning it. Thank you for trying. Thank you for not giving up on warning me even when you knew I might not listen. We exchanged contact information, actual numbers this time rather than one-way business cards. Vanessa promised to be available if I needed support or additional evidence. She also gave me the contact information for the woman before her, with permission to reach out if I wanted to verify the pattern extended beyond just the two of them. As we prepared to leave the coffee shop, Vanessa put her hand on my arm. One more thing. When you end it, when you walk away, he's going to start the cycle again. Within weeks, maybe days, there will be someone new. She'll be lovely and trusting and everything he's looking for. And he'll tell her all about his crazy ex who made wild accusations, who tried to sabotage his happiness. That ex will be you. I know, I said, though the thought made me feel ill. But at least I'll know the truth. I won't spend years questioning my own sanity. Vanessa smiled, a real smile this time despite the tears in her eyes. That's more than I had. Hold on to that. And when his next girlfriend tries to reach out to you, if she does, I hope you'll be brave enough to tell her what I've told you today. I will, I promised. The cycle has to break somewhere. Walking back to my car, the afternoon sun warm on my face, I felt strangely calm. The confusion and self-doubt that had plagued me since the engagement party had evaporated, replaced by cold clarity. I knew exactly what I needed to do. The only question remaining was how to do it safely, effectively, and without giving Derek any opportunity to manipulate the situation or rewrite what was about to happen. I had 48 hours before Derek and I were supposed to meet with the wedding planner for our first official consultation. 2 days to prepare, to gather my resources, to build my exit strategy. 2 days before I would look into the eyes of the man I'd planned to marry and tell him I knew exactly who he really was. The game was about to change. And this time, Derek Sullivan wasn't going to control the narrative. The drive back to the loft felt like traveling through a dream where everything looked familiar but nothing felt real anymore. The streets I'd driven down hundreds of times seemed different now, colored by the knowledge that my entire relationship had been constructed on deliberate deception. I parked in the underground garage and sat for several minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to organize my thoughts into something resembling a coherent plan. Chloe. I needed to talk to Chloe first, before I did anything else. She'd been my anchor since I moved to Portland, the friend who'd helped me assemble furniture in my first apartment, who'd listened to me cry over failed relationships, who'd celebrated with genuine joy when I'd introduced her to Derek. If anyone could help me think clearly through what came next, it would be her. I texted her from the car. Are you home? Need to talk. Kind of urgent. Her response came immediately. Always here for you. Come over now. 20 minutes later, I was sitting on Chloe's worn couch in her apartment in the Hawthorne district, the same neighborhood where I'd just met with Vanessa. Chloe had taken one look at my face and immediately put on water for tea, a ritual we developed over years of friendship for conversations that required comfort. Talk to me, she said, settling into the chair across from me with her own mug. What happened? I told her everything. The engagement party confrontation, Vanessa's bathroom warning, finding the December photos on Derek's phone, the coffee shop meeting and all the evidence Vanessa had shared. Chloe listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from concern to shock to anger as the full scope of Derek's deception became clear. When I finished, she set down her tea with careful precision, as if afraid sudden movement might cause her to throw the mug across the room. That manipulative son of a, she stopped herself, taking a breath. Lauren, I'm so sorry. I liked him. I really thought he was good for you. I feel like I should have seen something. How could you have seen it? I asked. I lived with him and I didn't see it. He's too good at this. Chloe's jaw tightened. Okay. So what's your plan? Because you are leaving him, right? Please tell me you're leaving him. I'm ending the engagement, I confirmed. But I need to do it strategically. Vanessa warned me that he'll try to manipulate the situation, rewrite what's happening, make me doubt myself. I need to be prepared for that. Chloe nodded slowly, her mind already working through logistics. First thing, you need to secure your stuff. How much of your things are at his place? Most of my clothes, some furniture I brought when I moved in, my laptop and files for work, personal documents. I never gave up my storage unit though, so a lot of my stuff from before we moved in together is still there. Good. That makes things easier. What about finances? Are your accounts connected? No, I said, feeling a rush of relief. We talked about combining accounts after the wedding but haven't done it yet. Everything is still separate. That's huge, Chloe said. That means you can walk away cleanly without financial entanglement. What about the apartment? Is your name on the lease? No, it's his place. I just moved in 6 weeks ago. Technically I'm still paying rent on my old apartment because the lease doesn't end until next month. I've been meaning to sublet it but haven't gotten around to it. Chloe's eyes lit up. Lauren, that's perfect. You still have your apartment. You can move back there immediately. You don't have to find a new place or stay with me while you figure things out. You literally have an exit already in place. She was right. In my shock and pain, I hadn't fully processed that I still maintained my own separate living space. The apartment I'd kept meaning to give up was now my escape route. Here's what I think you should do, Chloe said, leaning forward. Tomorrow, while Derek is at work, you go to the loft and pack everything that matters. Not everything, just the essentials and anything irreplaceable. Load it into your car and take it to your apartment. Get your important documents, your laptop, personal items, enough clothes for a week. Leave the furniture and anything that can be replaced. Why not take everything? I asked. Because taking everything signals you're leaving, Chloe explained. If you just take some stuff, he might think you're staying somewhere else temporarily or having space to think. It buys you time before he realizes you're actually gone. Plus, it means you can get out faster without multiple trips. The strategic thinking made sense. What about the confrontation? When do I tell him? After you're safe and your stuff is secure, Chloe said firmly. Text him that you need to talk, suggest meeting somewhere public. A coffee shop or restaurant, somewhere he can't blow up at you or try to physically prevent you from leaving. You tell him it's over, you tell him you know about the lies, and then you leave. No debate, no negotiation, no listening to his explanations. What if he shows up at my apartment? Then you don't answer the door, Chloe said. You tell him through the door that you've ended things and he needs to leave. If he refuses, you call the police. You document everything he does, every message he sends, every attempt to contact you. You build your own record the way Vanessa did. I felt steadier just having a concrete plan. Chloe's practical approach cut through the emotional fog that had been clouding my thinking. I'll help you move your stuff tomorrow, Chloe offered. Take the day off work. I'll call in sick. We'll get you out of there and set up back at your place before Derek even knows what's happening. Thank you, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I don't know what I'd do without you. You'd figure it out because you're strong as hell, Chloe replied. But you don't have to figure it out alone. That's what friends are for. That evening, I returned to the loft and acted as normally as I could manage. Derek came home around 7, kissed me hello, asked about my day. I told him work had been busy, asked about his meeting. We made dinner together, watched a show, went through all the mundane rituals of cohabitation. The whole time, I felt like I was watching myself from outside my body, observing a performance of a relationship that no longer existed. Derek seemed to sense nothing amiss. Why would he? I'd never given him reason to doubt my devotion, never questioned his stories, never pushed back on his narrative. I'd been the perfect girlfriend, trusting and supportive and eager to believe the best of him. Even now, watching him laugh at something on the television, I could almost convince myself I'd imagined the whole thing. Almost. That night, lying beside him in bed, I made myself remember everything Vanessa had told me. The pattern across multiple women. The financial manipulation. The systematic gaslighting. The way he'd rewritten her reality until she questioned her own sanity. I thought about the woman before Vanessa who tried to warn her, whose message had been ignored. I thought about who might come after me if I didn't end this now. Sleep didn't come easily. I kept rehearsing tomorrow's plan in my mind, anticipating problems, preparing responses. What if Derek came home early from work? What if a neighbor saw me loading my car and mentioned it to him? What if I forgot something crucial and had to go back? My anxiety spun elaborate disaster scenarios until exhaustion finally pulled me under somewhere near dawn. Derek's alarm went off at 6:30. I feigned sleep while he showered and dressed, listening to his familiar morning routine. The coffee maker brewing. The rustle of his jacket. The jingle of his keys. His goodbye kiss on my forehead, gentle enough not to wake me if I were truly sleeping. The door closing. The lock clicking into place. I waited 15 minutes to make sure he wasn't coming back for forgotten items. Then I got up, got dressed, and texted Chloe. He just left. I'm starting to pack. On my way, she responded immediately. Be there in 20. I moved through the apartment with mechanical efficiency, pulling clothes from the closet and drawers, gathering toiletries, unplugging my laptop and chargers. In the home office Derek and I shared, I retrieved my external hard drive with all my design work, my backup files, my personal documents. I found the folder where I kept important papers and took everything with my name on it. Birth certificate, passport, insurance documents, the title to my car. In the back of my desk drawer, I found the jewelry box with pieces my grandmother had left me. Not valuable in monetary terms, but irreplaceable. I tucked it carefully into my bag. On the bookshelf, I grabbed the photo albums from my childhood, the ones I'd brought when I moved in, thinking Derek and I would fill them with new memories together. Chloe arrived as promised, carrying empty boxes she'd grabbed from a liquor store. She took one look around and immediately understood the system I'd started. You take personal stuff and documents, I'll handle clothes and toiletries. We can do this in an hour if we move fast. We worked in focused silence, occasionally exchanging glances that conveyed more than words could. Chloe loaded boxes into my car while I made sure I hadn't missed anything crucial. My work portfolio. The external monitor I'd purchased myself. The throw pillows my mother had made. Each item I took felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that I'd given to Derek's narrative of our shared life. By 10:30, my car was packed tight with boxes and bags. The loft looked slightly emptier but not dramatically so. Derek would notice things missing eventually, but not immediately. Not until he started looking for something specific and couldn't find it. Before we left, I stood in the doorway taking one last look at the space I'd thought would be my home. The kitchen where we'd cooked together. The living room where we'd planned our wedding. The bedroom where I'd lain awake last night planning my escape. None of it had been real. All of it had been part of Derek's carefully constructed performance. "Let's go," Chloe said gently, her hand on my shoulder. "You don't owe this place anything." We drove to my apartment, the one I'd kept out of some combination of caution and procrastination. Now I understood it had been instinct, some part of me that had known better than to burn all my bridges. The apartment was dusty and smelled slightly stale from being closed up, but it was mine. Fully, completely mine. Chloe helped me unload boxes and get basic utilities set back up. We made a list of things I'd need to buy to make the place livable again since I'd taken most of my kitchenware and linens to Derek's loft. Not the expensive stuff I'd left behind, just basics. Sheets, towels, a few dishes. While Chloe ran to Target for supplies, I sat in my empty living room and composed the text message to Derek. I drafted it, deleted it, drafted it again, trying to find words that were clear and firm without being cruel or accusatory. Finally, I settled on simple and direct. "We need to talk. Can you meet me at the coffee shop on Belmont at 6 tonight? It's important." His response came within minutes. "Is everything okay? You're worrying me. Can we talk at home instead?" "I need to meet somewhere neutral," I typed back. 6 at the coffee shop. "I'll explain then." There was a longer pause before his next message. "Okay. I'll be there. I love you." I didn't respond to the "love you." Couldn't bring myself to send those words when I knew they'd be a lie. Chloe returned with bags full of basic supplies. She'd bought extra of everything, bless her, including wine and chocolate. "Breakup essentials," she said with a sad smile. "For after the hard part is over." We spent the afternoon making my apartment functional again. Chloe insisted on staying until it was time for me to meet Derek, helping me rehearse what I'd say, reminding me not to get drawn into debates or accept any of his explanations. "Remember," she coached, "you're not asking his permission to leave. You're not negotiating. You're informing him of a decision you've already made. When he tries to explain away the evidence, and he will, you just repeat that you've made your decision and it's final." "What if he cries?" I asked. "What if he seems genuinely hurt?" "Then he's a good actor," Chloe said bluntly. "Lauren, everything Vanessa told you, all that evidence, the pattern with multiple women, that's real. Whatever emotion he shows you tonight is just another performance designed to get you back under his control. Don't fall for it." At 5:30, I changed into fresh clothes and checked my appearance in the mirror. I looked tired, pale, but steady. I could do this. I had to do this. Chloe walked me to my car. "Call me the second it's over," she instructed. "And if anything feels wrong, if he gets aggressive or won't let you leave, you call me or you call the police. Don't try to handle it alone." "I won't," I promised. The coffee shop Derek had agreed to meet at was busy with the after-work crowd, exactly what I wanted. Enough people that he wouldn't make a scene, but not so crowded we couldn't have a private conversation. I arrived early, claimed a table in the back corner, and ordered tea I had no intention of drinking. Derek walked in at exactly 6. He spotted me immediately, his face showing concern and confusion. He slid into the seat across from me, reaching for my hand. The contact made my skin crawl, though I forced myself not to pull away immediately. "What's going on?" he asked. "You've been distant since the engagement party. I'm worried about you." Here it was. The moment I'd been preparing for all day. I took a breath and met his eyes directly. I'm ending our engagement, I said, keeping my voice level and clear. I know you cheated on Vanessa with me. I know you lied about when you broke up. I know there was no restraining order. I know about the pattern with women before her. And I'm done. Derek's expression cycled through several emotions in rapid succession. Shock, confusion, hurt, and then something harder to identify. Calculation, maybe. His hand tightened on mine before releasing it. Lauren, I don't know what you're talking about, he said, his voice taking on that reasonable, concerned tone I now recognized as manipulation. Did Vanessa contact you? Because if she did, you need to understand she's not well. She's been making up stories about me for months. I saw the photos on your phone, I said, not letting him redirect. From December. You and Vanessa together. Dating from after you told me you'd broken up. So either you lied to me about the timeline or you somehow managed to take photos in the future. Which is it? His face went very still. That pause told me everything I needed to know. He'd been caught in an irrefutable lie and was rapidly calculating his next move. You went through my phone? He said finally, his tone shifting to injured. You violated my privacy based on accusations from someone you know is unstable? You violated our entire relationship with lies, I countered. The photos exist, Derek. The timeline doesn't match what you told me. And before you try to explain them away, I've already documented everything. I've talked to Vanessa. I've seen the evidence. I know about the woman before her. I know about the pattern. It's over. Derek leaned back, his jaw working. Then he tried a different approach, his voice softening, eyes filling with what looked like genuine tears. Lauren, please. Yes, I made mistakes with the timing. I should have been honest about when Vanessa and I officially ended things. But I was scared of losing you. I knew if you thought I'd moved on too quickly, you'd think I was a player. I just wanted to protect what we have. By lying to me from day one? By making up stories about restraining orders? By telling me she was a stalker when she never contacted you? She did contact me, he insisted. Maybe not in ways I could prove legally, but the harassment was real. The drive-bys, the texts from different numbers. Just because I couldn't document it well enough for a restraining order doesn't mean it didn't happen. I have her phone records, I said flatly. She never called you after the breakup. I have her work schedule. She was at her clinic during the times you claimed she was stalking you. I have statements from witnesses. You made it all up to isolate me from anyone who could tell me the truth. Derek's expression hardened. So you're choosing to believe her over me. Your fiancé. The man who loves you and wants to build a life with you. I'm choosing to believe documented evidence over your words, I corrected. And I'm choosing to believe my own eyes. The photos don't lie, Derek. The timeline doesn't lie. You do. We sat in silence for a long moment. I could see him running through his options, trying to find an angle that would work. When he spoke again, his voice had lost its warmth. If you leave me over this, you're making a huge mistake. Vanessa is manipulating you. She's turned you against me with lies and fake evidence. You'll regret throwing away what we have. I already have regrets, I said. I regret not listening when there were warning signs. I regret trusting you blindly. I regret wasting months of my life on someone who was never honest with me. But I won't regret leaving before it got worse. I stood up, pulling my bag over my shoulder. I've moved my things out of your apartment. I'll arrange to get the rest later with a friend present. Don't contact me. Don't come to my apartment. Don't text or call. We're done, and I need you to respect that. Lauren, wait, Derek started to rise. No, I said firmly. This conversation is over. Goodbye, Derek. I walked out of the coffee shop without looking back, my heart pounding but my steps steady. Behind me, I could feel Derek's eyes following my exit, could imagine the calculations running through his mind about how to handle this unexpected development. In my car, I locked the doors immediately and sat for a moment, adrenaline making my hands shake. Then I pulled out my phone and called Chloe. "It's done," I said when she answered. I ended it. Her whoop of victory made me smile despite everything. "I'm so proud of you. Are you okay? Is he following you?" I checked the mirrors. The coffee shop door was still closed. "No, I'm alone. I'm going home now." "I'll meet you there," Chloe said. "We're celebrating your freedom tonight, even if the celebration looks like pizza and crying on the couch." The drive back to my apartment felt different than the drive there. Lighter somehow, despite the emotional weight of what I'd just done. I'd stood up for myself. I'd refused to be manipulated. I'd chosen my own reality over Derek's carefully constructed fiction. When I pulled into my parking spot, Chloe was already waiting, leaning against her car with a pizza box in hand and a determined look on her face. As I got out of my car, she pulled me into a fierce hug. "You did it," she whispered. "You got out. I'm so damn proud of you." Inside my apartment, we ate pizza straight from the box and I told her every detail of the confrontation. How Derek had tried different approaches. How he'd shifted from confusion to hurt to anger when nothing worked. How I'd walked away without wavering. "He's going to try to get you back," Chloe warned. "That's what guys like him do. They can't stand losing control. You need to be ready for love bombing, grand gestures, maybe even showing up places he knows you'll be." "I know," I said. "Vanessa warned me about that too. I'm prepared to block him on everything if I need to." "Not if," Chloe corrected. "When?" "Block him now, tonight, before he starts the campaign. Don't give him any avenue to reach you." She was right. I pulled out my phone and systematically blocked Derek's number, blocked him on social media, blocked his email address. Each click felt like closing a door on the life I'd thought I was building. My phone buzzed with a message notification before the blocks fully processed. It was from Derek. "I love you. I know you're angry right now, but please don't throw away what we have over a misunderstanding. Give me a chance to explain properly. I'm not perfect, but I'm yours, completely. Come home so we can work through this together." The message made my stomach turn. The possessive language disguised as devotion. The suggestion that I was the one being unreasonable. The pressure to return to his space where he held more control. I showed it to Chloe. She read it and shook her head grimly. "Classic manipulation. Notice how he's already reframing it as a misunderstanding that you're overreacting to? That's gaslighting 101. I finished implementing the blocks and set my phone aside. Whatever other messages Derek might send would go into a void where I'd never see them. That night, sleeping in my own bed in my own apartment, I felt simultaneously exhausted and oddly peaceful. I'd escaped. I'd seen through the manipulation and gotten out before the trap fully closed. Some women weren't as lucky. Vanessa had lost 3 years and $40,000. The woman before her had probably lost even more. My phone rang at 2 in the morning, an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again at 2:15, different unknown number. Again at 2:30. Derek was trying different ways to reach me, using friends' phones or virtual numbers. I turned my phone to Do Not Disturb and went back to sleep. The next morning, I woke to 17 missed calls from various numbers and a handful of voicemails I didn't listen to. I forwarded the call log to my email as documentation, just as Vanessa had recommended, then deleted the voicemails without playing them. Chloe texted around 8. "How are you holding up?" "Tired but okay," I replied. He tried calling from different numbers all night but I didn't answer. "Good. Hold that boundary. Want me to come over tonight?" I appreciated the offer but declined. I needed to start learning how to be alone again, how to trust my own company after months of orbiting around Derek's needs and preferences. At work, I threw myself into projects, grateful for the distraction of deadlines and client demands. My co-workers noticed I wasn't wearing my engagement ring but were polite enough not to ask directly. I appreciated their discretion. 3 days passed with no direct contact from Derek, though unknown numbers continued calling sporadically. I didn't answer any of them. On the 4th day, flowers arrived at Cascade Creative addressed to me. Expensive ones, probably $200 worth. The card read simply, "I miss you. Can we please talk? Love always, Derek." I gave the flowers to the receptionist and asked her to dispose of the card. When she offered the arrangement to anyone in the office who wanted it, 3 people jumped at the chance. The flowers were gone within minutes, Derek's grand gesture reduced to office decoration disconnected from their intended manipulation. That evening, Vanessa texted. "How are you doing? I've been thinking about you." "I'm okay," I typed back. "Ended it 3 days ago. He's trying to contact me but I'm not responding." "Good. Stay strong." The trying to reconnect phase usually lasts about a week before they move to anger or they move on to someone new. Either way, hold your boundaries. Her support meant more than she probably realized. Someone who understood the pattern, who'd been through it herself, who could assure me that what I was experiencing was normal and expected rather than signs that I was being cruel or unreasonable. On day 6, Patricia Sullivan, Derek's mother, called me. I stared at her name on the screen, debating whether to answer. Finally, I picked up, curious what Derek had told his parents about our breakup. "Lauren, honey," Patricia's warm voice came through. "Derek told us you've ended the engagement." "I'm so sorry. He's absolutely heartbroken. Is there anything I can do to help you two work through whatever's happened?" Her genuine kindness made this harder. "Mrs. Sullivan, I appreciate your concern, but my decision is final. I'm sorry I can't give you more details, but Derek and I aren't compatible in ways I didn't realize until recently. He mentioned something about his ex-girlfriend contacting you," Patricia said carefully. "I know Vanessa was difficult for him. She had some mental health struggles that made things very hard. I hope she didn't say things that made you question Derek's character, because he really is a good man." There it was. Derek had already started poisoning the well, ensuring that even his parents would dismiss anything I might say as the product of Vanessa's manipulation. The system was self-reinforcing, protected at every level. "I understand you see him that way," I said diplomatically. "But I've made my decision based on my own experience and judgment. I hope you can respect that." Patricia sighed. "Of course, dear. If you ever want to talk, just know I'm here. You seemed like such a good match for him." After we hung up, I felt sad for Patricia. She genuinely believed her son was a good person unfairly persecuted by unstable women. She had no idea about the pattern, the manipulation, the systematic way Derek moved through relationships. And Derek would probably never let her know. By the end of the first week, the calls and flower deliveries stopped. Vanessa had been right about the timeline. I wondered if Derek was already moving on to someone new, if there was already another woman somewhere being charmed by his practiced routine, being told about his crazy ex who'd made wild accusations. That woman would be me now in his stories. The jealous fiancé who'd thrown away their perfect relationship over paranoid delusions. The one who'd betrayed his trust by going through his phone and believing lies from his unhinged ex. I'd become the villain in his next relationship's origin story. The thought should have bothered me more than it did. But I'd learned something crucial from this experience. I'd learned that my understanding of truth mattered more than Derek's version of reality. I'd learned to trust myself even when someone I loved was telling me I was wrong. I'd learned that walking away from manipulation was an act of self-preservation, not cruelty. 2 weeks after our coffee shop confrontation, I was finally starting to feel like myself again. The constant anxiety that had plagued me since the engagement party had faded. I slept through the night. I enjoyed my work. I made plans with friends without checking first whether Derek needed me for something. Chloe noticed the change. "You look lighter," she observed over dinner one night. "Like someone lifted weight off your shoulders." "I feel lighter," I admitted. I didn't realize how much energy it took to maintain that relationship until I stopped having to do it. That's the invisible cost of manipulation, Chloe said. It exhausts you in ways you don't even notice until it stops. 3 weeks after ending things with Derek, I received an unexpected message from a number I didn't recognize. The preview showed it wasn't from Derek, but the content made my blood run cold. Hi Lauren. My name is Melissa Chong. I got your number from Vanessa Park. I know this is random and probably unwelcome, but I was the girlfriend before Vanessa. Before Derek told her I was the crazy stalker ex. I was wondering if we could talk. I think there are things you should know about how far his pattern goes. I stared at the message for a full minute before responding. When can we meet? We arranged to meet the following evening at a wine bar in the Alberta Arts District, far enough from my usual haunts that I wouldn't accidentally run into anyone from Derek's circle. Melissa had suggested bringing Vanessa along as well, creating a strange survivor support group of Derek Sullivan's ex-girlfriends. When I arrived, I spotted them immediately at a corner table. Vanessa I recognized, though she looked more relaxed than during our tense coffee shop meeting. The woman beside her had to be Melissa, Asian with sharp intelligent eyes and an air of quiet confidence. She stood when I approached, extending her hand. Lauren. Thank you for agreeing to meet. I know this is incredibly weird. Weird is relative at this point, I said, shaking her hand. After everything else, meeting my ex-fiancé's previous victims actually feels pretty normal. We settled around the table with glasses of wine none of us seemed particularly interested in drinking. For a moment, we just looked at each other, 3 women connected by one man's systematic manipulation. Vanessa told me you got out quickly, Melissa said. 3 months from when you met him to when you ended it. That's impressive. It took me almost 2 years to see through everything. I had help, I acknowledged, nodding toward Vanessa. She warned me at my engagement party. Without that, I'd probably still be planning a wedding. Melissa's expression darkened. He's engaged again already? It's been less than a year since Vanessa. 7 months, Vanessa confirmed. He moves fast once he identifies a new target. Lauren seemed perfect for him. Successful, independent, new enough to Portland that she didn't have deep connections to warn her about his reputation. What reputation? I asked. Does anyone besides us actually know what he does? Melissa and Vanessa exchanged glances. That's part of why I wanted to meet, Melissa said. After Vanessa and I connected last year and realized we'd both been through the same pattern, we started digging. Trying to find out how many others there were, how long this has been going on, whether anyone in his life knows or cares. She pulled out a tablet similar to the one Vanessa had shown me. On the screen was a document that looked like an investigation file. Names, dates, timelines, patterns. We've identified 6 women for certain, Melissa continued. There are probably more we haven't found yet. The earliest we can verify is from about 10 years ago when Derek was 22 and just starting at Summit Marketing Group. The pattern has been consistent the entire time. 6 women, I repeated, trying to process the scale. 6 women he'd love-bombed, lied to, manipulated, and then discarded while rewriting them as villains in his ongoing story. That we know of, Vanessa emphasized. There could be more who didn't leave a paper trail or who he managed to silence completely. Melissa swiped through images on the tablet. Each screen showed a different woman's story, meticulously documented. Photos, timelines, copies of messages, financial records. It was like looking at a serial pattern, each victim slightly different but the methodology eerily similar. This one is Amanda Richards, Melissa said, pointing to a photo of a redhead with a bright smile. She dated Derek from age 22 to 24. According to what we could piece together from her social media before she made everything private, he convinced her to invest in a startup he claimed to be launching. $35,000. The startup never existed. And this is Brittany Coleman, Vanessa added, pointing to another photo. 25 to 27. She ended up in therapy for 2 years after their relationship ended because she thought she was having a breakdown. Turns out Derek had been systematically gaslighting her about increasingly serious things. Hiding her belongings and insisting she'd lost them. Changing plans and swearing she'd agreed to the changes. Classic psychological abuse tactics. Each woman's story was a variation on the same theme. The intense courtship. The stories about crazy exes. The gradual isolation and reality distortion. The financial manipulation or emotional abuse or both. The inevitable discard when they started questioning his narrative. And then the final insult, being rewritten as the unstable ex for the next woman in line. Have any of you confronted him together? I asked. Showed up with evidence and demanded accountability? We've considered it, Melissa said. But what would it accomplish? He'd just deny everything, claim we're bitter exes who have banded together to destroy him. Without legal charges we can press, there's no real consequence we can impose. What about warning people? Going public? Vanessa shook her head. We've thought about that too. Creating a blog or social media page exposing the pattern. But legally we'd be on shaky ground. He could sue for defamation. Even if we won, the legal battle would be expensive and exhausting. Plus, it would make us look exactly like the obsessive exes he's described. It would confirm his narrative rather than challenge it. The trap was perfect. Any attempt to warn others or seek justice could be reframed as evidence of the very instability Derek claimed his exes suffered from. He'd constructed a system that protected itself. So what do we do? I asked. Just let him keep doing this to woman after woman? We do what we've been doing, Melissa said. We quietly reach out to his new girlfriends when we can identify them. We share our evidence. We hope they listen. Some do, like you. Some don't. But at least we try. How do you even find his new girlfriends? I asked. Social media mostly, Vanessa explained. Derek is careful but not perfect. He tags locations, posts photos eventually, mentions people in comments. We monitor his accounts from fake profiles. When a new woman starts appearing regularly, we try to identify her and reach out. It's not a perfect system, but it's something. The dedication was both admirable and deeply sad. These women had been hurt badly enough that they were investing time and energy into protecting strangers from the same fate. There's something else you should know, Melissa said, her tone shifting to something more serious. It's the real reason I wanted to meet. About a month ago, Vanessa and I found the earliest victim we could verify. Her name is Catherine Liu. She dated Derek for 3 years starting when they were both 19, in college together. What happened to her? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. She attempted suicide, Melissa said quietly. Twice. Once during the relationship and once after. She spent time in inpatient psychiatric care. Her family had to intervene and basically stage a rescue to get her away from him. According to her younger sister, who we managed to contact, Derek had her so turned around psychologically that she genuinely believed she was losing her mind. The wine suddenly tasted sour. I set my glass down carefully. Does Derek know about the suicide attempts? According to Catherine's sister, yes. He visited her in the hospital after the first attempt. Brought flowers. Told her family he was trying to be supportive despite their difficult breakup. Made himself look like the concerned ex-boyfriend dealing with a mentally ill partner. So he knows his manipulation can drive someone to attempt suicide and he's continued doing it for 10 years, I said, the full weight of that settling over me. That's what we're dealing with, Vanessa confirmed. This isn't someone who made mistakes or has poor relationship skills. This is someone who has a pattern of deliberate psychological abuse that he's refined over a decade. And he keeps getting away with it because the system is built to protect men like him and doubt women like us. We sat in heavy silence. I thought about how close I'd come to being deeper in Derek's web. If Vanessa hadn't warned me at the engagement party, I would have married him. Combined finances. Maybe left my job to work on his fake consulting business. Within a year or two, I could have been as trapped and psychologically damaged as Catherine had been. I want to help, I said finally. Whatever you're doing to warn people and document the pattern, count me in. Melissa smiled, though it was tinged with sadness. Welcome to the club nobody wants to be in. Over the next hour, they walked me through their system. The fake social media accounts they used to monitor Derek. The shared document where they tracked his patterns and relationships. The network of mutual acquaintances they'd cultivated who could provide information about his activities. It was like they'd created their own informal investigation operation. The key is documentation, Melissa explained. Every interaction any of us has with him, we document with dates, times, screenshots, whatever we can get. If he ever does something illegal that we can actually report, we want an ironclad record. But also, if any of his future victims needs evidence to protect themselves legally, we can provide it. Has he ever gotten violent? I asked. Physically dangerous? Not that we know of, Vanessa said. His abuse is entirely psychological and financial. He's too smart to leave marks that could be photographed or used as evidence. Everything he does is designed to be deniable, explainable, easy to dismiss as misunderstanding or relationship drama. As we prepared to leave the wine bar, Melissa handed me a card with an email address. This is our secure contact for the group. There are 8 of us now who actively share information and support each other. Some of the earlier victims don't want to be involved anymore and we respect that. But if you want to join us, you're welcome. I took the card, tucking it carefully into my wallet. Thank you. For reaching out, for doing this work, for giving a damn about protecting strangers. We protect each other, Vanessa said simply. That's what Derek never understood about women. He thinks we're all in competition for his attention. He doesn't realize that once we see through him, we become allies. Walking to my car, I felt a strange mixture of emotions. Anger at Derek for the systematic harm he'd caused. Sadness for the women whose lives he'd damaged. But also something unexpected, gratitude. Gratitude that I'd gotten out relatively unscathed. Gratitude for Vanessa's courage in warning me. Gratitude to be connecting with women who understood what I'd been through. That night, I composed an email to the secure address Melissa had given me, introducing myself formally to the group. Within hours, I received responses from women across the country. Some of Derek's exes had moved away from Portland, putting physical distance between themselves and their trauma. But they all still checked in, still kept watch, still tried to protect whoever came next. Reading their stories was both heartbreaking and illuminating. The details varied, but the emotional arc was always the same. The intoxicating beginning. The gradual erosion of self-trust. The moment of clarity when the pattern became visible. The difficult escape. And then the long recovery process of learning to trust themselves and others again. One woman, Jessica, had written about how Derek's gaslighting had been so effective that even 3 years later, she still sometimes questioned her own memories and perceptions. Another, Heather, described the financial hole she'd spent 2 years climbing out of after Derek had convinced her to quit her job and invest in his schemes. Each story was a testament to both the damage one person could inflict and the resilience of his survivors. As I read through the shared documents and communication threads, I began to understand the scope of what Melissa and Vanessa had built. This wasn't just a support group. It was a warning system, a documentation project, and a healing community all in one. They'd taken their individual traumas and transformed them into collective protection. Over the following weeks, I settled into a new routine. Work at Cascade Creative during the day. Evening walks to clear my head. Regular check-ins with Chloe, who remained my anchor to normalcy. And periodic updates to the group email when I noticed Derek's social media activity or heard through mutual acquaintances about his movements. A month after joining the group, Vanessa sent an urgent message. Spotted Derek with someone new. Young, maybe mid-20s. Saw them at a restaurant downtown. Getting serious fast based on body language. The response was immediate. Melissa started trying to identify the woman through social media. Another group member, Sarah, checked whether she appeared in the background of any of Derek's recent posts. Within 48 hours, we had a name, Rachel Morrison, 26, working as a junior analyst at a financial services firm. Now came the hard part. Reaching out to Rachel without sounding exactly like the crazy exes Derek had undoubtedly already told her about. We'd learned from experience that direct confrontation rarely worked. Rachel would be in the honeymoon phase where Derek seemed perfect. Any suggestion otherwise would be dismissed as jealousy or instability. I volunteered to contact her. I typed into the group chat. I'm the most recent ex. My story will be freshest in Derek's mind, so she might have heard my name. If I reach out, there's a chance she'll be curious rather than immediately defensive. The group discussed strategy for several hours. What to say, how to say it, what evidence to lead with. Finally, we crafted a message that felt both honest and non-threatening. Hi Rachel. My name is Lauren Hayes. I was engaged to Derek Sullivan until recently. I know he's told you about me and probably not in flattering terms. I'm not reaching out to cause drama or try to get him back. I'm reaching out because I wish someone had warned me before I got in too deep. If you're ever interested in talking, no pressure, my number is below. I hope you have a lovely day regardless. Simple. Non-accusatory. Offering connection without demanding it. We sent it through Facebook message since her Instagram was private and email felt too formal. For 3 days, there was no response. I checked my phone compulsively, wondering if Rachel had shown the message to Derek, if he was already crafting his counter-narrative, if I'd made things worse by reaching out. Then, on the 4th day, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Is this Lauren? This is Rachel. Derek's girlfriend. Can we talk? My heart rate spiked. I typed back immediately. Yes. Anytime you want. Would you prefer to meet in person or talk on the phone? In person if possible. There are things I want to ask you face to face. Tomorrow afternoon? We arranged to meet at a park in Selwood, public and neutral. I immediately notified the group, and within minutes had a flood of advice and support. Vanessa offered to come with me as backup. Melissa sent a list of key points to cover. Sarah reminded me to stay calm even if Rachel was hostile initially. The next afternoon, I arrived at the park 15 minutes early, nerves jangling. Rachel appeared right on time, and I recognized her from the social media photos we'd found. Petite, with dark curly hair and an expression that wavered between defiant and afraid. We sat on a bench overlooking the river. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Derek told me you were vindictive, Rachel said finally. That you made up lies about him because he ended things and you couldn't handle it. He told me the same thing about his ex before me, I replied. And she told me he'd said the same about the woman before her. It's part of the pattern. Rachel's jaw tightened. What pattern? I took a breath and began explaining. Not everything at once, but the key points. The timeline lies. The gaslighting. The financial manipulation some women had experienced. The way he isolated each girlfriend from anyone who might contradict his narrative. Rachel listened without interrupting, her expression cycling through doubt, recognition, and growing horror. When I finished, she sat in silence for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone and showed me a text thread with Derek. The messages were from 2 weeks earlier, before they'd become official. He told me he'd been single for almost a year after a bad breakup with someone who turned out to be unstable, Rachel said quietly. But if you only broke up with him 6 weeks ago, that timeline doesn't work. I showed her the photos from my engagement party, dated and geotagged. The photo of Derek and me that I'd posted announcing our engagement. The breakup was recent and definitely not his decision. Rachel's hands were shaking slightly. There are other things too. Small things I've been explaining away. He knows details about my life I never told him. He shows up places I'm going to be without me mentioning I'd be there. He's been encouraging me to transfer to a different firm, says my current company doesn't appreciate me. I thought he was being supportive, but now I'm wondering if he's trying to isolate me from my colleagues. Those are all red flags, I confirmed gently. The excessive knowledge about your life could mean he's monitoring your social media more carefully than he lets on. Showing up places could be him tracking your location if he's convinced you to share it. And suggesting you leave your job is classic isolation technique. Rachel looked like she might cry. We've only been together 6 weeks and I already feel like I'm in too deep. He's talking about me moving in with him. Says his lease allows it and we'd save money. But everything is moving so fast, and when I tried to pump the brakes last week, he got this look. Not angry, just cold. Like he was recalculating something. That's exactly how he looked at me when I confronted him, I said. Like he was running through options about how to regain control of the situation. We talked for another hour. I showed Rachel the documentation Melissa and Vanessa had compiled. Connected her with the group email. Gave her resources for therapists who specialized in relationship trauma. By the time we parted ways, Rachel was pale but resolved. I need to end this, she said. Tonight, before I lose my nerve. Do it somewhere public, I advised. Bring a friend if you can. Don't go to his apartment alone. Rachel nodded. Thank you. For reaching out, for taking the time to warn me. I almost deleted your message without reading it because Derek had warned me you might try to contact me. He said if you did, it would prove everything he'd told me about your instability. That's the trap, I said. He preemptively discredits anyone who might tell you the truth. That way, when they reach out, you're primed to dismiss them. We exchanged numbers and agreed to stay in touch. As I watched Rachel walk away, I felt the same mixture of sadness and relief I'd experienced after my own escape. Sadness that another woman had been pulled into Derek's web. Relief that she was getting out before serious damage was done. That evening, I updated the group. Rachel is ending it tonight. She believed me. We might have actually saved someone. The responses came in quickly, a chorus of support and celebration. Each woman in that group knew how rare it was to reach someone in time, how often the warnings were ignored or dismissed. Rachel's willingness to listen felt like a small victory against Derek's pattern. 2 days later, Rachel messaged me. It's done. He tried all the same tactics you described. Denial, deflection, tears, anger. I held firm. Blocked him on everything. I'm safe. I'm proud of you, I wrote back. That took real courage. I'm joining the group officially, Rachel replied. If we could save me, maybe we can save others. And so our network grew by 1. 6 women became 7. 7 witnesses to Derek Sullivan's pattern. 7 survivors who refused to stay silent even when silence would have been easier. 6 months had passed since I'd ended my engagement to Derek Sullivan. 6 months of rebuilding myself, reconnecting with the person I'd been before his manipulation had started reshaping my reality. 6 months of working with the Survivor Network, warning new targets, documenting patterns, and slowly coming to terms with how close I'd come to losing myself completely. Winter had settled over Portland, bringing the kind of persistent rain that made everything feel gray and introspective. I'd come to appreciate these quiet months, using them for reflection and healing. My apartment no longer felt like a refuge from Derek's apartment but simply my home. The space I'd filled with my own choices, my own style, my own life. Cascade Creative had promoted me to senior designer, recognizing work I'd poured myself into during the months following the breakup. The irony wasn't lost on me that ending my relationship had somehow freed creative energy I hadn't realized was being suppressed. My portfolio had expanded with bold, confident pieces that clients loved. Chloe had become even more central to my life, our friendship deepening through the crisis and its aftermath. We'd developed new traditions. Thursday night dinners where we tried cooking recipes neither of us had attempted before. Weekend hikes when the weather permitted. Long conversations about everything and nothing, the kind of easy companionship that reminded me what healthy relationships actually looked like. The Survivor Network had grown as well. Rachel had indeed joined us, bringing fresh perspective and energy to our documentation efforts. Through her, we'd identified 2 more of Derek's previous relationships we hadn't known about, extending his pattern back even further than we'd originally traced. We now had confirmed evidence of manipulation spanning 12 years and affecting at least 9 women. But the network had evolved beyond just tracking Derek. We'd started supporting each other through the messy work of recovery. Sharing therapist recommendations. Celebrating milestones like the first time someone could hear a song that reminded them of their relationship without spiraling. Offering perspective when self-doubt crept in and old gaslighting tapes started playing in our heads. Vanessa had become something close to a friend. We met for coffee every few weeks, conversations that ranged from trauma processing to mundane complaints about work to shared excitement over new hobbies we were developing. She'd started rock climbing as a way to rebuild trust in her own body and judgment. I'd taken up pottery, finding something meditative about shaping clay with my hands, creating something tangible and real. It was during one of these coffee meetings that Vanessa told me about the email she'd received from Catherine Lou's sister. Emma reached out, Vanessa said, referring to the younger sister of Derek's earliest confirmed victim. Catherine is doing better. She's been in consistent therapy for years now and finally feels ready to talk about what happened. She wants to meet with us if we're willing. The prospect filled me with both hope and trepidation. Catherine represented the most severe damage we knew Derek had caused. Meeting her felt significant, like closing some kind of circle. 2 weeks later, 5 of us gathered at a community center in Northeast Portland. Melissa, Vanessa, Rachel, and I waited nervously as Catherine arrived with her sister Emma. Catherine was 31 now, 12 years removed from her relationship with Derek, but I could still see shadows of trauma in the careful way she moved, the wariness in her eyes as she scanned the room. We sat in a circle, an informal arrangement that felt less intimidating than facing each other across a table. For several minutes, no one spoke. Then Catherine took a deep breath. "I want to start by saying thank you," she began, her voice quiet but steady. "Emma told me about the work you've all been doing. Tracking him, warning his new targets, documenting everything. When I was going through the worst of it, I felt completely alone. I thought I was losing my mind. Knowing that others experienced the same thing, that it wasn't just me, that means more than you can imagine." "You're not alone," Vanessa said gently. "None of us are anymore." Catherine nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "Derek and I met in college. I was 19, he was 19. We dated for 3 years and by the end, I didn't recognize myself. I'd gone from this confident freshman who knew exactly what she wanted to someone who questioned every thought, every memory, every perception. He was so good at making me doubt myself." She described a relationship that followed the now familiar pattern but with an intensity that made my stomach turn. The love bombing had been extreme. Derek had written her poetry, created elaborate surprise dates, talked about their future together with such specificity that she'd felt their life was already mapped out. Then came the gradual undermining. Small criticisms disguised as concern. Suggestions that her friends were bad influences. Encouragement to skip family events because they triggered her anxiety he'd helped create. "The worst part was how he'd weaponize my mental health," Catherine continued. "I'd struggled with depression in high school, something I'd been open about with him early on. He used that against me constantly. Anytime I questioned something he'd said or done, he'd suggest I was having an episode. That my depression was making me paranoid or irrational. I started believing him." By the time Catherine was 21, she'd attempted suicide for the first time. Derek had visited her in the hospital, playing the role of concerned boyfriend so convincingly that even her parents had felt grateful for his support. He'd told them Catherine's mental illness was getting worse, that he was trying his best but felt helpless watching her spiral. "The second attempt came after they'd broken up," Catherine said, her voice dropping lower. "I'd finally ended things, but the damage was so deep I couldn't function. I genuinely believed I was fundamentally broken, that my perceptions couldn't be trusted, that I was the problem Derek had always said I was. It took years of intensive therapy to understand that what I'd experienced was abuse, not mental illness." Emma, Catherine's sister, spoke up. "Our family didn't understand for a long time. We thought Catherine was just struggling with mental health issues. Derek seemed so supportive, so patient. It wasn't until years later, after Catherine started processing everything in therapy, that we realized he'd been the source of the trauma, not a bystander to it. Catherine looked around our circle, making eye contact with each of us. The reason I wanted to meet you all is because I've been working towards something. With my therapist's support, I'm planning to file a formal complaint against Derek with the Oregon State Bar. Confusion flickered across our faces. Derek isn't a lawyer, Melissa said. No, but his father is, Catherine replied. And his father has been using his position and connections to help Derek avoid consequences for years. I've discovered that there have been at least 3 informal complaints filed against Derek with various employers and organizations over the years. Sexual harassment at a previous job. Fraudulent business practices. Each time, his father intervened, used his legal connections to make things disappear, settlements with confidentiality clauses, threats of defamation suits. The bar has ethics rules about lawyers using their position to help family members escape accountability for harmful behavior. The revelation sent a ripple through the group. We'd known Derek had avoided consequences, but we'd attributed it to charm and manipulation, not active cover-ups facilitated by his attorney father. I'd been working with an attorney who specializes in ethics violations, Catherine continued. We're building a case that Derek's father has engaged in conduct unbecoming of a lawyer by repeatedly using his legal knowledge and connections to shield his son from appropriate consequences for a pattern of harmful behavior. It's a long shot, but if we can get the bar to investigate, it might finally create real accountability. What do you need from us? I asked. Documentation, Catherine said. Everything you've compiled. The timeline of his relationships. The financial fraud. The psychological manipulation. Evidence that this isn't isolated incidents but a sustained pattern. And I need some of you to be willing to give statements to the investigator if it comes to that. Around the circle, heads nodded. After years of feeling powerless, of warning victims one by one while Derek continued his cycle, here was a chance for systemic intervention. It might not work, but at least it was action beyond our informal network. Over the following weeks, we worked with Catherine's attorney to compile everything we'd gathered. The documentation that had started as self-protection and evolved into a warning system now became the foundation of a formal complaint. Phone records, financial documents, medical records that Catherine was willing to share showing the psychiatric treatment she'd needed. Statements from therapists about the common patterns they'd observed across multiple clients who'd been in relationships with the same individual. The attorney, a sharp woman named Christine Park who specialized in legal ethics cases, was impressed by the thoroughness of our records. You've essentially conducted a civilian investigation that's more detailed than some professional inquiries I've seen, she told us during one of our meetings. This gives us a real foundation to work from. But she was also realistic about our chances. The bar takes these complaints seriously, but proving that a lawyer used their position inappropriately to protect a family member is difficult. We'll need to show not just that Derek's father helped him, but that he did so in ways that violated his ethical obligations as an attorney. That's a high bar to clear. We understood. But even the attempt felt important. Even if the complaint went nowhere, we'd have created an official record of Derek's pattern. Something that couldn't be dismissed as bitter exes making unsubstantiated claims. While the legal process moved forward at its characteristically slow pace, life continued. I'd started dating again, cautiously and with newly developed radar for red flags. A few coffee dates that went nowhere. One brief relationship that ended amicably when we both realized the chemistry wasn't there. I was learning to trust my judgment again, to recognize the difference between genuine connection and manipulative charm. Vanessa had moved on as well, recently going on several dates with a woman she'd met through her rock climbing gym. The relationship was progressing slowly, both of them cautious about rushing, but Vanessa seemed genuinely happy in a way I hadn't seen before. Melissa had relocated to Seattle for a new job opportunity, creating physical distance from Portland and all its reminders of Derek. She stayed active in the group remotely, offering perspective from someone further along in the healing process. Rachel had thrown herself into therapy and self-discovery, emerging with a clarity about what she wanted from relationships and life. She'd started a blog about recognizing manipulation tactics in dating, carefully avoiding naming Derek specifically but sharing the patterns she'd learned to identify. The blog had gained a small but dedicated following of people sharing their own experiences and supporting each other. It was 8 months after I'd ended my engagement when Christine Park called with an update. "The bar has agreed to open a formal investigation," she told me, barely contained excitement in her voice. "They've assigned an investigator who'll be contacting each of you for statements. This is significant. They don't open investigations lightly." The news spread through the Survivor network rapidly. After years of Derek operating with impunity, someone with actual authority was finally taking our evidence seriously. It felt surreal. The investigator, a methodical man named Richard Chen, spent weeks interviewing us individually. He reviewed our documentation, verified our timelines, checked our sources. The process was exhausting, requiring us to relive painful experiences in minute detail. But Richard treated us with respect, never questioning whether our experiences were real, only seeking to understand the full scope of the pattern. 3 months into the investigation, something unexpected happened. Richard contacted Christine to report that during his inquiry, he discovered 2 additional complaints against Derek that had been quietly settled by his father. One involved a woman Derek had dated 5 years ago who'd lost significant money in a fraudulent investment scheme. The other was from a former colleague who'd accused Derek of taking credit for her work and forcing her out of a project through psychological manipulation. In both cases, Derek's father had negotiated settlements that included confidentiality agreements and no admission of wrongdoing. Richard had found references to these settlements while reviewing the father's professional records. The pattern of protection was even more extensive than we'd realized. As winter turned to spring, Portland emerged from its gray cocoon into sudden bursts of cherry blossoms and clear skies. I found myself in a different place emotionally than I'd been at the start of this journey. The raw pain of betrayal had transformed into something more complex. Understanding of patterns that extended beyond my individual experience. Compassion for the other women who'd been harmed. Determination to create accountability where none had existed before. One evening, I met Vanessa at our usual coffee shop. She'd asked to talk about something specific, her message suggesting it was important. "I heard from Emma," Vanessa said once we'd settled into our corner table. "Catherine wanted her to tell us that she's doing something else. Something beyond the bar complaint." "What's that?" I asked. "She's writing a book. About her experience, about the pattern, about how psychological abuse works and why it's so hard to escape. She's not using Derek's real name, but she's being very specific about the tactics and the harm. Her therapist thinks it could be therapeutic for her and helpful for others trying to understand what they've been through." "That's brave," I said, genuinely impressed. "Going that public with her story." "That's what I thought too," Vanessa agreed. "But Catherine said something to Emma that really stuck with me. She said that Derek stole years of her life, but she's not going to let him steal her voice too. If her story can help even one person recognize these patterns earlier than we did, it's worth the vulnerability." We sat quietly for a moment, sipping our drinks and watching rain begin to spatter against the window. Spring in Portland meant sun 1 minute and showers the next, everything in constant flux. "I've been thinking about what comes after," I said finally. "After the investigation concludes, whatever the outcome. After Catherine's book is published. After we've done everything we can to create accountability and warn people. What do we do with the rest of our lives beyond being defined by what Derek did to us?" Vanessa smiled. "We live them. Fully, messily, bravely. We build relationships based on honesty instead of manipulation. We trust our judgment because we've learned to recognize when it's being undermined. We use what we learn to help others, but we don't make it our whole identity." She paused, then continued. "I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I spent 3 years with Derek and almost a year after that piecing myself back together. That's a significant chunk of my 20s. But I'm 30 now, and I have hopefully 50 or 60 years ahead of me. I refuse to spend all of that time being the woman who was victimized by a narcissist. I want to be the woman who survived, learned, grew, and went on to live an amazing life in spite of what happened." Her words resonated deeply. The work we'd been doing with the Survivor Network, the documentation and warning system and now the formal complaint, all of it was important. But it couldn't be our entire existence. At some point, we needed to reclaim our lives from Derek's shadow. 5 months after Richard Chin began his investigation, Christine called with the final outcome. The Oregon State Bar had concluded its inquiry and reached a decision. Derek's father was being formally sanctioned for ethics violations. The specific charges included using legal knowledge and position to help a family member evade appropriate consequences for fraudulent business practices, and engaging in conduct prejudicial to the administration of justice by facilitating settlements designed to silence victims of a repeated pattern of harmful behavior. The sanctions included a public reprimand, a substantial fine, mandatory ethics training, and a year of supervised practice. It wasn't disbarment, but it was significant. The decision would be published in the bar's public records, creating a permanent mark on his professional reputation. More importantly, the investigation's findings included detailed documentation of Derek's pattern of behavior. While Derek himself wasn't being charged with anything criminal, the bar's report created an official record of his manipulation, fraud, and psychological abuse spanning over a decade. That record was now part of the public file. When I shared the news with the Survivor Network, the response was overwhelming. Relief, vindication, satisfaction, and a strange sense of closure. We hadn't gotten Derek arrested or forced him into therapy or stopped him from potentially hurting others in the future. But we'd created consequences where none had existed before. We'd made his pattern visible in an official capacity that couldn't be dismissed as bitter exes gossiping. Catherine sent a message to the group that evening. Thank you. To every single one of you. For believing me when I told my story. For adding your voices to mine. For refusing to stay silent even when silence would have been easier. This outcome exists because of collective action, because of women refusing to be isolated and discredited. I'm grateful beyond words. That summer, I attended a book launch event at Powell's Books in downtown Portland. Catherine's memoir had been published by a small but respected press that specialized in trauma narratives. The store's reading room was packed with people, far more than I'd expected. Clearly, Catherine's story resonated with audiences beyond just Derek's direct victims. Catherine read from a chapter about her recovery, about the slow process of learning to trust her own perceptions again after years of having them systematically undermined. Her voice was strong, confident in a way that spoke to genuine healing rather than performed strength. During the Q&A session, a young woman in the audience raised her hand. How did you know when you were ready to tell your story publicly? She asked. I've been through something similar and I'm terrified of my ex seeing it and coming after me or people not believing me. Catherine's response was thoughtful. I had to reach a point where my need to speak my truth outweighed my fear of consequences. That came from years of therapy, from building a support network of people who believed me, and from understanding that his power over me only existed if I let fear keep me silent. But everyone's timeline is different. There's no shame in choosing privacy if that's what feels safest for you. After the reading, several of us from the Survivor Network stayed to talk with Catherine. She signed books, gave hugs, and introduced us to her publisher, who mentioned that several other women had already reached out wanting to share similar stories about different abusers. Catherine's courage in going public was creating space for others to speak. Walking back to my car through the warm summer evening, I felt something settle inside me. Peace, maybe, or at least a sense of having done what we could with what we had. Derek Sullivan was still out there somewhere. He might be charming a new target right now, starting the cycle over with fresh manipulation. We couldn't stop that directly. But we'd created a record. We'd built a network. We'd established consequences. We'd told our stories in ways that might help others recognize the patterns earlier. And we'd done it together, transforming individual trauma into collective resistance. My phone buzzed with a message from Chloe. Dinner this week? Want to try making that Thai curry recipe? I smiled and typed back. Absolutely. Thursday night? Life was moving forward. I was moving forward. The woman Derek had almost managed to trap in his web of manipulation was gone, replaced by someone wiser, more cautious, but also more open to genuine connection because she knew how to recognize its counterfeit. A year after ending my engagement, I found myself at a gallery opening for a local artist. The space was crowded with Portland's creative community, the kind of event I'd avoided during my relationship with Derek because he'd always found reasons why these gatherings weren't worth our time. Now I understood that isolation for what it was, another control tactic disguised as preference. I was admiring a striking abstract piece when someone beside me commented on the use of color. I turned to find a man about my age with kind eyes and an easy smile. We fell into conversation about the artwork, then about the Portland art scene generally, then about our work and lives. His name was Marcus, and he worked as an environmental scientist. When he asked if I wanted to continue the conversation over coffee sometime, I said yes without the hypervigilance that had characterized my early attempts at dating after Derek. Not because I'd stopped being careful, but because I'd learned to trust my instincts while also staying grounded in reality. On our second date, when Marcus mentioned his previous serious relationship had ended amicably and his ex was now a good friend, I paid attention to how he talked about her. With respect, with acknowledgement of both good times and incompatibilities, with no suggestion that she'd been unstable or problematic. Green flags, I'd learned, were just as important to notice as red ones. When I eventually told Marcus about my experience with Derek, several months into our relationship, he listened without judgment or attempts to fix anything. "That sounds terrifying," he said simply. "I'm glad you got out." His response, so straightforward and validating, made me realize how far I'd come in recognizing healthy communication. The Survivor Network continued its work, now with increased visibility thanks to Catherine's book and the Barr investigation's public findings. We'd been contacted by journalists writing about patterns of manipulation in relationships, by researchers studying emotional abuse, by advocacy groups working on policy changes around psychological harm. Our individual experiences had contributed to broader conversations about recognizing and addressing manipulation tactics. 2 years after my engagement ended, I received an unexpected message. It was from Patricia Sullivan, Derek's mother. "Lauren, I know I have no right to contact you after so long, but I wanted you to know that Thomas and I have started to understand what Derek has been doing. The Barr investigation opened our eyes to patterns we've been blind to or explaining away. We've insisted Derek enter therapy, real therapy with someone who specializes in personality disorders, as a condition of remaining in our lives. I can't undo the harm he caused you and the other women, but I want you to know we believe you. I'm so sorry we didn't see it sooner. I'm so sorry we protected him when we should have been protecting his victims." I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Patricia's acknowledgement didn't erase the harm Derek had caused or the years his parents had enabled his behavior. But it represented something important. A breaking of the cycle of denial and protection that had allowed Derek to continue his pattern unchecked. I showed the message to Vanessa during our next coffee meeting. She read it thoughtfully. "Do you think he'll actually change?" she asked. "The therapy, I mean." "I don't know," I admitted. "Probably not. People with his level of manipulative skill rarely change fundamentally because they don't believe they're the problem. But at least his parents are seeing reality now. At least he'll face some accountability at home even if he keeps manipulating romantic partners." "That's something," Vanessa agreed. "Not enough, but something. We'd learned to find meaning in small victories. The Barr sanctions that didn't disbar Derek's father but created public record of wrongdoing. The Survivor Network that couldn't stop Derek but could warn his targets. The therapy his parents insisted on that might not change him but at least represented acknowledgement. Perfect justice might not exist, but imperfect accountability was still worth pursuing. 3 years after ending my engagement, I stood in a familiar coffee shop in Hawthorne, waiting to meet someone I'd never expected to hear from again. An unknown number had texted asking if I was the Lauren who'd been engaged to Derek Sullivan. When I'd confirmed, warily, the message had continued. "My name is Natalie. I'm dating Derek." "Well, I was until yesterday. I found your information through the network of women he's hurt. Can we talk?" And so the cycle continued, but with a difference. Natalie had found us, had done her own research when things felt wrong, had reached out before the damage went too deep. The warning system worked. Not perfectly, not always, but enough to matter. When Natalie walked into the coffee shop, I saw my own past self in her face. The confusion, the hurt, the desperate need to understand what had happened to her. I stood to greet her, offering a genuine smile. "Thank you for meeting me," Natalie said, her voice shaking slightly. "I know this must be exhausting, dealing with his victims over and over." "You're not dealing with victims," I corrected gently. "You're joining survivors. There's a difference. And you're welcome here." We sat down, and I began the now familiar process of explaining the pattern, sharing documentation, offering resources and support. But this time felt different somehow. Not just another repetition of the same story, but evidence of evolution. Natalie had found us faster than Rachel had. She'd been dating Derek for only 2 months before recognizing the red flags and doing research. The network's increased visibility, Catherine's book, the public bar investigation findings, all of it had created breadcrumbs that led Natalie to us before she'd invested years of her life. Progress. Imperfect, incremental, but real. As I walked home that evening, the late spring sun warm on my face, I thought about the journey from that engagement party where Vanessa had first warned me to this moment 3 years later. The person I'd been then, trusting and naive despite my intelligence and education, felt like a different lifetime. I'd gained so much and lost so much and somehow ended up in a place of unexpected strength. My phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. "Dinner tonight? I'm making that pasta dish you love." I smiled and typed back. "Perfect. I'll bring wine." Life after Derek wasn't perfect. I still had moments of doubt, times when old gaslighting tapes played in my head and I had to consciously remind myself that my perceptions were valid. I still felt angry sometimes about the months I'd lost to his manipulation, the emotional energy I'd spent untangling his lies. But I'd also found community in unexpected places, formed bonds with women who understood my experience in ways my longest friends couldn't. I'd discovered reserves of strength I hadn't known I possessed. I'd learned to advocate for myself and others. I'd built a life that was authentically mine rather than shaped by someone else's needs and manipulations. The Survivor Network continued to grow and evolve. We'd helped 19 women escape Derek's pattern. We'd contributed to policy discussions about emotional abuse. We'd created resources that were being used by therapists and advocacy groups. What had started as individual pain had transformed into collective healing and social change. And perhaps most importantly, I'd learned that recovery wasn't about going back to who I was before Derek. It was about integrating the experience, using the hard-won wisdom to become someone new. Someone who could spot manipulation from a mile away. Someone who valued genuine connection over surface charm. Someone who knew the difference between healthy boundaries and controlling behavior. Derek Sullivan had tried to write my story for me, casting himself as the hero and me as whatever role suited his narrative at any given moment. But I'd taken the pen back. This was my story now, mine to tell, mine to shape, mine to conclude on my own terms. And the ending, I'd decided, wasn't about Derek at all. It was about everything that came after. The friendships forged in shared trauma. The strength discovered through survival. The meaning created from pain. The woman I'd become through the process of rebuilding. That woman was someone I was proud to be. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.